Hey everybody, happy Monday. Um, hope, hey everybody, happy Monday. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to talk a little bit about emotions and feelings today. I do a lot of chatting around emotional intelligence and our feelings, and those things that that we struggle to deal with occasionally. I don't know whether it's just me or whether everybody else out there has that problem. Um, but generally, we have a lack of emotional literacy, right? I think I've talked about this before, that most people have like 6 emotions that they can name, right? Happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise, right? So hey, surprise, that's an emotion, right? Um, so there's like 6 that we talk about, but I mean there are many more, like pride, embarrassment, shame, guilt. There's so many different emotions and feelings that we can feel and sense, um, but don't necessarily know how to name when we're feeling them, because oftentimes shame and embarrassment can result in anger, right? Or anger and fear can result in anxiety, right? Um, so these things, that we feel, both now and sorry, I'm just adjusting this here a little bit. These feelings and emotions that we feel now can really, if we can name them and kind of feel through them, we can actually deal with them a lot more healthily, right? Part of the reason why we're not good at healthily dealing with our emotions, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I'm not perfect. I don't pretend to be. I can deal with my emotions on a lot of levels and at a lot of times. I can talk about my emotions at a lot of times, particularly grief and fear, and anger and sadness, and all of these things that that I feel. I can try to name them, and I can try to talk about my experience with them, but it's a matter of kind of understanding the biological process, right? That is emotions, right? We all feel emotions. We all have feelings, whether that's a physical sensation or an emotional sensation. We all have this ability to change and to adapt based on what our feelings and emotions are, right? There's a lot of innate sensations that we have, right? Our intuition, for instance. When you're walking down a dark alley, your body, your senses heighten, right? And your emotions get heightened as well, right? So your fear and your potential for a reaction are heightened. But if you're certainly in control of those emotions, if you feel calm, relaxed, not necessarily in a dark alley, but you may feel calm enough that you can handle anything that might jump out at you, right? And cause you to be fearful. So it's those sorts of things that that we can manage through a sort of healthy knowledge of our feelings and emotions. So one of the things that I've tried to work on, certainly of late, is kind of just recognizing when I'm feeling a certain feeling or an emotion, or and not necessarily labeling it, but just kind of feeling it. Where is it in my body that I'm sensing this, right? So if it's fear, for instance, is it in my neck? Is it in my chest? Is it in my gut? Where am I feeling that sense of fear, right? Or where am I feeling that sense of anxiety? And what is it telling me? Okay, what is it that I'm actually feeling? What's that sensation telling me? So by asking that, and by actually trying to understand what it is that I'm sensing and feeling, I get a really good grasp of what it is that that I can, or how it is that I can respond to that sensation. So that's one of the critical things here, is that we as humans, we have the capability to manage our emotions and our feelings to a point where we can actually respond rather than react, right? In the animal kingdom, a lot of activity is reaction, right? So a tiger or a lion sees prey and it reacts immediately, right? It knows that it can attack and eat, right? We as humans, right, we take a moment to kind of consider all the options, the strategies, the sensations, the feelings, the emotions, and then we decide, or then we can decide what to do. The problem that we face is that there are, a lot of people who, I guess, have a struggle with their emotions and their feelings, and therefore they react rather than respond. So, whether it's, out of pride or out of shame or embarrassment or even out of excitement, right? We get really excited and we just jump into something and then we're like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, what am I doing, right? So oftentimes we can, if we can identify the emotion or the feeling that we're feeling. So, hey, I'm really excited, right? I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you guys. But I need to just temper that excitement with a little bit of caution and not really just talk randomly about something that, that maybe is irrelevant or maybe offends or maybe it, doesn't serve, right? So, my objective here is to serve, you, my friends and tribe and people that know me. And if I'm serving you well, then my excitement, my sort of my happiness, right, is not hinging on, the response that I give you, but it's on, what it is that I'm doing to serve you, right? So it's an internal feeling of happiness, and it's an internal feeling of satisfaction, and it's an internal feeling of excitement that comes to me when I deliver this talk to you, because I feel like I'm sharing part of me with you. I'm serving you. I'm sending you this love and this care and this kindness that I have inside of me, so that you can, receive that and benefit from it, right? So while we have these emotions, these basic emotions like, happiness and sadness and fear and anger and disgust and surprise and embarrassment and pride, well, not pride, but shame, and, well, I guess pride is one of them. But, we tend to, mislabel them, or we tend to label them for full stop when we're feeling them, without really feeling them, right? Am I making sense? I hope so. So in reality, instead of just labeling, right, identify the feeling and the sensation that comes with it, right? That's part of the critical thing here for managing, right, your emotions and your feelings, is to understand what it is that you're sensing, what it is that your body is feeling in that moment. And that helps to manage your response, right? So rather than react, you respond, right? And there's a difference, right? A reaction is like this innate sort of fight or flight or freeze or fawn kind of reaction, right? That's the croc brain, the amygdala is, what's kind of driving all of that. But then, we have this rational brain, which, doesn't necessarily help us kind of control, but it helps us identify the emotions and feel the feelings and sense the sensations. And that is where I think we, if we reside in that part of our body, then we can identify our emotions. We can identify with the feelings and the sensation. And we can go with those and we can manage our responses much better, right? So we don't react, we respond. But, fear has a way of making us react, right? Embarrassment has a way of making us react. I know a lot of people who, when they get embarrassed, both get indignant and angry, right? they feel vulnerable, right? And they fear vulnerability. So again, it's fear. So there's a lot of a lot of feelings and sensations that we have to deal with that that oftentimes we confuse, and we don't necessarily address them the way that we want to, right? In hindsight, we look back maybe an hour or two later after we've reacted to something, right? So say for instance, I react to my dog barking, right? It raises a sense or feeling in me that I'm out of control, right? But I don't actually, have my dog under control 100% of the time because he's out of the room or he's outside. So, for me to fear or have that sort of anxiety raise and react to the dog barking, right, is not unusual because I'm out of control, or because I'm not sensing where that lack of control is in my body and going with it and then responding to the dog rather than reacting to him, right? That's just kind of a basic example. It's not really necessarily, what we all may do. So, there is basically, this number of universal feelings and emotions that we all sense, right, as human beings. Some to a better degree than others, to a lesser degree than most of us, because autism robs the brain of abilities to recognize and respond to emotions. So that's another, that's a completely separate issue. But things like happiness, right? How do we find happiness? And I've talked about this before. It's, it is an internal feeling, right? It is something that we, have within us, that we can't really rely on the outside world to bring it to us. Yes, we can get happiness or find happiness in another person, in an animal, in a pet, in a, going to the beach, or doing any number of things, right? But really those are distractions. It's really the internal sensation of happiness, right? Are you happy with your true self, right? That's the internal sensation of happiness. If that is something that you have, then that's unshakable, right? And even in times where, your grief or your fear or your anger kind of outplays your happiness, you can truly find that sense of happiness again, if if you're truly in touch with your emotions and your feelings. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that it's something that you can do instantaneously. Oftentimes we need to sit with with our emotions and our feelings in order to rediscover what it is that's causing us any negative sensations, or what we perceive as negative sensations. Anger, fear, embarrassment, shame, whatever. Those are what we would consider negative, right? Sensations and feelings and emotions, versus happiness, contentment, excitement, all of those things which are positive, right? We feel they're positive stuff, or positive emotions and such. And a lot of what we sense as an individual, as a person, is rooted in our true self, right? In that voice that's deep inside of us, that's always been there, that's been constant throughout our lives. And finding that sort of sense of, I guess, curiosity is the good word for it, I think, today, for describing what it is that you find when you dive deep into yourself and say, well, what is it and why is it that I'm feeling this way? Or what is that emotion that I'm feeling, and why am I feeling that emotion? And what is the sort of internal cause of that? What is the fear? Is the fear success? Is the fear failure? Is the fear of being hurt? Is the fear of, what other people think or might think, right? There's all sorts of things that come into play there. And it came back to, what I said a few moments ago. I know a lot of people who, when they're embarrassed or they're, feel ashamed, they get angry because that's their sort of default reaction to their own shame and embarrassment, whatever it is that may have been deep rooted in them that's caused that. And their response is anger, because they're angry with themselves for being, feeling ashamed and feeling embarrassed. And then they're also sort of, struggling with the vulnerability piece, which is, to really accept that they're embarrassed or they're, ashamed of their behavior or their action. I look back at my life, and there's a number of times that, I've said and done things to people I love, to people I care about, and I'm ashamed of those things, right? But now I've forgiven myself for those things. And by doing that, by forgiving myself and by addressing the what I feel are the root causes, the emotions and the feelings that were deep inside of me that were causing me to feel that way, by addressing those, I've now kind of released them. I've accepted them, right? I've accepted that I have faults, and of course we all do. But I have released those sort of negative things that I believe were the conditions and the programs that I had been raised with from, a young child to the present. And by accepting that those were the programs and conditions that I was given when I was, or that I was, programmed with, like a computer. And now I've rebooted that computer, right? I've got rid of some of those programs and conditions. Hopefully all of the ones that I feel are negative. And by being able to identify and go with the emotions and the feelings that I have become more at ease with my vulnerability, with my ability to talk about my feelings and my emotions, to understand why I'm feeling embarrassed. Did I say something incorrect? Did I say something wrong? Am I angry because I chose the wrong words to say to someone, and that has caused a reaction in them that I didn't intend? So am I angry with myself for doing that? Sometimes, yes, that's what happens. But I then choose, or at least try to choose my response rather than a reaction, right? So that's what I was going to say, is I'm trying to choose to respond in a constructive way, in a healthy way, rather than react. So oftentimes when we have arguments with people, we have two different viewpoints. One says one thing, one says the other thing. We kind of butt up against each other, and this, rather than, oftentimes we get, we ratchet up, we get more and more angry, we get more and more intransigent and embarrassed. Even if we recognize we're wrong, right? We get embarrassed and indignant about not wanting to be wrong. So we choose, rather than to say, hold on a minute, wait a minute, maybe I am wrong, and I need to take that in and feel where that, and understand where that feels in my body, to kind of know that I'm incorrect and that I'm in the wrong when I'm having this argument. And then diffuse that situation internally first before you do it externally. Oftentimes, we hear that, we have an argument with somebody, and then something is said, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, that was funny. And we all start laughing, and it's like, oh my God, what were we fighting about in the first place? What were we arguing about in the first place? Again, that is an emotional response rather than a reaction, right? So we choose in that moment to use levity to diffuse the negativity or the anger or the emotion, the really strong emotion of embarrassment or shame or fear or whatever it was that was causing the argument. Could even be disgust, right? We feel like we're, I don't know, we're disgusted by something that really offends us, right? And that causes our own anger and our own embarrassment and our own shame to rise up, right? And therefore we react to whatever it was that disgusted us in the first place. And that, that in and of itself is not necessarily, the worst part of it. The worst part of it is then going back and looking back and saying, well, God, I could have reacted differently. And oftentimes we say that to ourselves. We say, oh, I should have reacted differently. What I like to try and do is respond actively, but in a way that is appropriate to the situation. So that's why they say when you're angry, count to 10, right? Because that slows you down and it gives you that sort of breathing space, that moment to respond rather than react. Because when we react out of anger or embarrassment or fear or surprise or whatever, oftentimes we react in a negative way that can hurt ourselves and others, especially others. I know people who are, who struggle with bipolarity and mental health issues, oftentimes react in ways that are way beyond the sort of, even the trigger itself, right? The trigger might be something so minor, yet their reaction is totally disproportionate for that. And a lot of the time, that's an emotional and inability to feel the feelings response, right? If you're unable to feel your feelings and to understand your emotions, then you're gonna react rather than respond. So I think that today, what I wanted to just kind of deal with is what are our emotions and what what's the language around them that we use, not just externally, but internally, right, to ourselves to address what it is that we're feeling when we're feeling it, right? And is that, do we trust our intuition? Do we trust our gut? Do we trust what we're feeling in our heart? Do we trust what we're feeling in our shoulders and our neck when, when we get tense, or when we're kind of fearful, right? Or, as the cat kingdom would be, their hackles come up, right? And the dog's hackles as well would come up if they're feeling fear or sensing danger, right? It's a physiological, natural response, right? But a dog or a cat will react out of their natural instinct, right? And what I'm saying we can do through acknowledging and understanding our emotions and our feelings as human beings is that we can actually we can override our natural instincts, right? Our natural instinct when we're angry may be to lash out, it may be to hurt, it may be to to cause physical or even emotional damage to someone else. But because we are human and we are able to understand our emotions and our feelings, and we are actually the only species, as far as I'm aware, that can control them. And I may be wrong, but I believe we're the only species that can control our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts, of course, that we can respond rather than react. We can override that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, reaction, right? And we can respond in a more healthy, appropriate way, right? Without acting out, without being aggressive or even dangerous. So that's, there's a number of different kind of things that we can do as individuals, as human beings, that other animals don't because of their nature, right? So anyway, I think I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm kind of done here on that subject, and I guess I wanted to say thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I will probably be back tomorrow, Tuesday, 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. If you want to join me then, I'd appreciate it. And tell a friend. These are public, so anyone can join. Share with your network, share with your friends. I do enjoy, the opportunity to connect with you, and appreciate you spending your lunchtime or whatever time with me, Simon. I guess you're over there in England. It's dinner time, or gone dinner time over there. But thank you all very much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All right, hopefully tomorrow. Take care. Thanks, everybody.